Right. Here it goes. Okay, great. All right, guys. So thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Jade Stanley, and we are going to cover building your business built to sell. I have with me Terri Sherman, and she is excellent at what she does. I'm excited to introduce her in regards to selling businesses or acquiring businesses as well. But this is going to really share some topics regarding what are the ins and outs of this? Similar to, purchasing anything, you always want to assess, especially in a very large value of a purchase, what it is you're buying into and or what you're selling. So I'm excited to introduce you guys and welcome Terri to Building Your Business. And this is Build to Sell edition.
All right. Thank you for having me.
So if you'll tell us a little bit about yourself, Terri, and then also we'll go right into the presentation.
Absolutely. So as Jade said, Terri Sherman, I'm a business intermediary with Florida Business Exchange, and we are a Florida-based business brokerage. So our main office is headquartered in Fort Orange. I'm in the Jacksonville office, and we have offices throughout the state. So I tend to handle Jacksonville, kind of northeast Florida, through kind of Gainesville area, and then down to South Florida. So I know I kind of make a little bit of a leap there, but we are able to service any county within the state of Florida. So with that said, we are members of the Business Brokers of Florida, the BBF, which is our state organization. And so just kind of a word of advice on that, when you're seeking a professional, you certainly want to ask them what professional organizations they are members of. So for instance, again, the BBF is really probably the most organized business brokerage system, if you will, in the country. I think we lead that. So we have a multiple listing service, similar to what realtors have for homes, but ours just has all businesses. So we have close to 4,000 listings on market throughout Florida at any given time, varieties of the industries, price points, all kinds of things. So that's really where the BBF comes in. And we do a lot of business brokering in a co-broke situation. So we work with each other agents to kind of match up buyers and sellers, which is ultimately our goal. So we do assist with the transactions. We are transactional. I think that's important to say, which means that we represent the deal itself. So we're able to work with the buyers and the sellers and to kind of get into a little bit of nuance in terms of what separates a business broker from a realtor. If you have been through like a traditional, home buying process or some piece of property, typically you don't meet the seller, right, until you get to the closing table. It's kind of the reverse for us. So very early on, it's our goal as the middle people, the intermediary, right, to put the two of you together as a buyer and a seller. So we help with that process and really kind of start it from if it's a buyer searching for an opportunity and looking for matches that match up to the end to the closing table. And if it's a seller, from starting with helping them package up the business to move it to the closing table. So that's really what our role is as business brokers.
Awesome. So Terri, just to give us a little higher level overview, I know that we are going to cover some more details about what's included in this. What are some of the business types and industries that you've been working with?
Oh my goodness. So I always say to people that hospitality always leads, specifically restaurants, food service, right? And of course, we know that has been greatly impacted by this COVID climate. However, it just seems that restaurants are the first thing people seem to think that they want. If they're looking like, I want to open a business. And unfortunately, a lot of times they're sometimes the first things to close. So restaurants are always a constant, but I like to kind of push people to think outside of the box. So if you're an animal lover, there's plenty of animal or pet related businesses out there. Medical is very popular. So any segment of medical that you can think of, from medical pharmacies and independent pharmacies to actual medical practices. I've had a buyer that I've been working with trying to find an opportunity in an imaging center. So it really can get as granular as you want it. Trucking has become very popular. I have a number of people that have been asking about trucking and logistics companies, routes, down to even your service businesses, nail shops, barber shops, salons. It can really be anything. So, when you're looking and thinking about moving into the business ownership space, really think about where your interests lie. You know, what are you really passionate about? What is your skill set? What is your expertise? Because you may be surprised at how those things match up with an industry that you might not think of, but could be a really nice wedge right into that.
That's a really good value add. I definitely am excited to talk about this topic a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things we're going to dive into are what are the types of clients. I think a lot of people are not well versed in business brokerage, and so it's very important that we not only talk about the industries, but what are the type of scenarios that you're uncovering, and then we'll also dive into what are some of the things that you can do to be prepared should you encounter any of these reasons to sell. So Terri, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Absolutely. So I love this map here because I think it really kind of, as you said, Jade, gives people a way to kind of think about, well, do any of these apply to me or even someone that I know? So a lot of people will say, well, I'm not ready to sell yet. You know, this doesn't apply to me. We live in a very dynamic world. Things happen every day. So, you know, it's better to kind of at least know that you have options before you kind of get in the position and feel like your back is against the wall and you have no option other than to close your doors. Because a lot of times people aren't familiar with an exit strategy through a sale of their business as a possible exit. So it's nice to be able to kind of add this feather to your hat. So some reasons to sell, I call these the buzzwords, right? So we'll go clockwise, starting with burnout. Burnout is burnout, right? If you're tired and you're just like, you know, I really used to love my business, but I'm just tired, I'm spent, and I'm about ready just to walk. Reach out, okay? Before you get to that point, reach out because you never know that you, again, may have something viable there to sell. Retirement is a big one, and this is a really big opportunity to, I'll kind of piggyback this on the buy side because we're in the age of the baby boomer generation, right? Retiring. This is huge because there are already so many businesses that have moved to market with people who are retirement age, and there will be more, you know, as we move to the next 2 to 3 years. So retirement is a great opportunity to acquire a business from someone who is just simply ready to hang it up, okay? Plateau is something that people don't think about. So I like to think of it that in all of our respective lives, we all know that we should know at least, right, what our limitations are. And we can only go so far individually. So it may be that you have picked the ball up, my bad football analogy, right? You've picked the ball up, you've run it down the field, but you can't make it to the end zone. You can't with your resources perhaps, or your current staff, your capital, whatever that may be, you've just plateaued. And so maybe it's time to pass that ball to someone else who can run it further down the field. So that's a really good reason to look at a sale. A partnership dissolution, sometimes these are amicable and sometimes, unfortunately, they're not. But if you are in the midst of that, or you kind of see the writing on the wall that it may be coming on the pike, another good reason to sell. And it could be that the partner buys, if there's two partners, for instance, one buys the other out, or it's an outright sale of the whole thing. Divorce is another big reason that we see businesses come to market too. And then you also have the acquisition entrepreneurs. And I use that term from a book called Buy Then Build. Buy Then Build is the book by Walker Diebel, I believe his last name is. And it's a great book, and he terms it the acquisition entrepreneurship. So people who are simply entering the space of entrepreneurship, some might think of them like as venture capitalists, and they're simply doing this through acquiring different businesses. And it's kind of the whole buy low, sell high mentality, right? So they buy something, grow it 3 to 5 years, and then they sell it. So these are all just some kind of very general reasons, but great kind of buzzwords and labels, if you will, that you may begin to think about for yourself, or even, again, someone that you may know that may be a good time to prompt them to say, well, have you ever considered selling the business versus just thinking, I'm going to close my doors? Or the other one that we hear a lot is, I'm going to leave it to my kids. 9 times out of 10, they don't want it. Okay, so you can definitely try to think about other opportunities for you to exit.
That's a really great point. I'm going to pick up where you left off on that.
Yes.
So just giving you guys some insight, one of the most important things that I've been covering as I'm working through business strategies for a lot of my clients is that they want a system that it's just going to stay a family business. And a lot of times when they think on a smaller scale, they're going to stay on a smaller
Mm-hmm.
scale. And so a lot of times you're not going to go and venture out into different avenues and channels and worry about the strategic planning if you think, oh, well, it's just going to be within my family.
That's
I'll
right.
give you a couple of references of some scenarios that I've encountered as of late. So I am working with a business owner that has a juice shop, and she did not realize the level of attention that she was going to have to give to that juice shop, meaning
Yeah.
she has to be there if the employees call out. What is the business continuity of you navigating through a local shop that has business
Mm-hmm.
hours, and there must be someone there, whether or not you have the employees to be there for you in your place. So a lot of times I'm encountering business owners who cannot go on vacation in
That's
their
right.
business because they are not strategically set up with business continuity plans. And one of the lacking that she had within the business was a lack of procedures, which we're going to talk about tonight as
Mm-hmm.
well. But encountering people who enter a business, you're bold. You've come into something that you're like, I'm passionate about this. And we stay in a position where we must see it through because
That's
we don't
right.
want to see failure. And a lot of times I have to tell the clients, it's time for you to think about being adaptable to things that are within your skill set. If you
Mm-hmm.
decide that you enter a business that you do not love, then you have the power to change it and get yourself out of it. And
Yes.
there may be someone who would be interested in picking up this business because you're not in love with it anymore, but it is a really good money maker, and you've
That's
decided you
right.
want to pivot and make that change into a new avenue. So with that being said, I think it's very important that as we talk about the different reasons why people are leaving a business, whether it be, the divorce or retirement, but a lot of it I'm seeing is burnout, which
Yes.
means they did not anticipate all of the hats that is required for you
This
to
is so true.
stay in the business.
This is so
So
true. And you raised several valid points. I think the biggest gem is the word just being adaptable, which I think, again, the current world climate has forced all of us, even those of us that may think we're adaptable, to really assess, like, wow, so this is ever changing and I have to be able to pivot if I want to be sustainable. But you made a very valid point. Sometimes you do, even through an acquisition, enter into a business that you don't love. Like you said, if it's the hours, perhaps you felt like, oh, I can control the hours. I'm home by 5 and the alarm goes off at 2 a.m. and you got to get out of the bed. And that's the difference between working a job as an employee and having the responsibility of being the business owner. Like, you can't cut that off. You are that business owner now 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But you're right. You can change it. And the beauty of acquisition entrepreneurship is that you may not feel like there's much value in your business, but someone coming in may, because you've already set up something, right? So in other words, kind of like a cheat code for a buyer, right? Like, I'm skipping steps 1 through 3 because you've already done it. You've got the lease in place. You've probably got it equipped. You have hopefully some employees. And even if you're not cash flowing well, or maybe you're even losing money, maybe I see that my skill set will match up nicely and I can turn this thing around. Maybe I just love your products. So you're exactly right, Jade, that knowing that you have the power and possibly opportunity to change that and make an exit out of it that's still beneficial to you. It may not be what you want, but sometimes it's like, if I can walk with $5 versus walking with $0, like, that's a win.
Exactly. And if anything has showed us during this lovely year of 2020, and I call it a lovely year, not just being sarcastic, but also there are a lot of positives that have come out of this
Mm-hmm.
year, and we will not gain from thinking about only the negative. So some of the
So true.
positives that's come out of this year is realizing that our business has gaps and holes in it and lapses,
Mm-hmm.
and we could be better prepared for the future. and so I say this to anyone who's on here. And again, please, we welcome any chat, any feedback that you have in the box about where you're at, about the next couple of slides. I think especially going to really resonate for you regarding the holes and the gaps. But if you suffered business-wise during the coronavirus, have you done a proper assessment to see that this won't happen again? Meaning you're already lost money and revenue and you're having a difficult time bouncing back. What have you thought about so that, God forbid, if this happens again, whether it be a year or 2 years from now, how will you be able to stay in a stable environment in your business, and or do you need to create additional streams of income? So it's very important as we're navigating through this topic, because it's definitely been, and I can imagine, Terri, maybe business has been a little booming as well, probably for you, because people are like, I'm ready to get out of this business. This was the shift or the pivot, and it's not a great pivot or shift because you get forced into it through a virus, a pandemic. So yeah, definitely excited to be able to share this information with you, to give you some alternative thinking and thought processes on this.
Absolutely.
All right, so Terri, I'm going to give you the slide of why and what are the avenues to sell.
Okay.
What can we look into?
So there's several avenues, right? So I've kind of labeled these, and these are my terms. So kind of take it with a grain of salt, but I think you'll understand why I'm calling it these. So we have the traditional exit, okay? So you simply, as a seller, business owner, you're selling to a buyer. Now those buyers may fall into one of two pools, and there are others, but we'll just talk about the basic ones, right? They're either going to be strategic or they're going to be financial. So when we say that they're financial, that's someone who is dead set on the numbers have to make sense for me. Like it has to be cash flowing X, it has to be grossing Y, and I'm going to pay you a multiple of one of those two things, whatever they assess that multiple to be, is in their approach to the business and the financial. The strategic buyer, though, is the one who may see that, okay, maybe the business is losing money, but I understand that if I acquire this, perhaps I'm putting myself in a strategic position to either grow this existing business far beyond what the current business owner has done, or perhaps I'm already in business, right? Maybe I could be a competitor. So for me, the strategy is I can acquire your book of business, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, and not only quickly expand my customer base, but I low-key just knocked out my competitor too. So now I have a larger market share. So it is what it is. That's kind of a two-way street. Or it could be that maybe it's a vertical add-on, right? So I'm trying to add on to my supply chain or something. So I use probably another not so great example, but it's what comes to mind. I spoke about this at a presentation recently. Let's take an event planner, okay? And so this event planner is outsourcing everything, right? The catering, the flowers, all these things for their clients. All of a sudden they realize, oh wait, there's a florist for sale, okay? So maybe as the event planner, I want to acquire this florist because all of a sudden now I can control that pipeline without having to outsource it. So perhaps I can get a better margin when I book that into my package, or perhaps that florist, again, and maybe it has a manager in place and a key staff that I don't really have to be there day to day, but it's a nice add-on to my existing business, and I'm able to work with my clients too. Maybe I can afford to give them better rates on their flowers than having to outsource them to my vendor who's charging, a 40-50% margin. I can give it to you for 20 or 30. Whatever the case may be, again, you have these two pools, financial or strategic. So in that traditional exit to one of those two types of buyers, they're simply going to acquire the business assets. They may or may not want to keep the existing DBA. A lot of times they will. A lot of times they also want to keep the business continuity going, as Jade referenced. So they're going to most likely keep your employees. They're probably going to keep doing business the same way that you've done it. They're just going to add it to, or add their flavor, if you will, to it to grow it. Okay, so they continue the business. Now, a merger is another example. Now, before I fell into this industry, I do say that I fell into this. This was not like I set out as a life goal to be a business broker. In fact, I didn't even know what one was. Okay, so when I begin to understand the concept of business brokerage on what we call a main street level, and when we say main street businesses, that refers to the mom and pop businesses that we all support, right? Your dry cleaners, your deli, if you're like me, have all these little restaurants that you like to frequent. We call those main street businesses. So your ones that aren't necessarily franchised and aren't major corporations, right? So when I begin to understand that concept, the light bulb went off and it was like, oh, so like when we hear about the airlines merging together, right? Like Delta is going to acquire Southwest, I don't know. That's a merger. What's the difference in taking that same concept on the main street level? So let's say that I own a staffing company and Jade owns a staffing company. And all of a sudden we realize, hey, if we look at this, my staffing company happens to be in Miami and I cover Orlando South, and Jade's happens to be in Jacksonville and covers, let's even say Savannah to Orlando. And we realize, oh, wait a minute, if we merge our two companies, right, we kind of work out some kind of merger of some sort, all of a sudden we just took over the entire state. So that's another way to look at an avenue to sell, that it's a collective expansion. And again, this may include a roll-up. I'll give you another example. I actually know of a dental practice, a dentist, who begin to go around the state and pick up small independent dental practices, right? And so what they would do is, it may only have one hygienist and one dentist, but they pick it up in air quotes, right? And they roll this up with maybe 4 or 5 other small acquisitions of that type. But all of a sudden they rebrand them. Now this one dental practice now has 7 locations throughout the state by just picking up small independent practices and then rolling them up into this major brand. So that's another exit. Then you have this third avenue, private equity or some similar buyout. Now, when you get into the private equity scenarios, these investors kind of collectively come together and they have their criteria that they are looking for. So they really base things on what's called EBITDA. So that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Did I get that right? EBITDA, I think so. So anyway, they value businesses based on this multiple of EBITDA, okay? These are gonna be a lot of times your larger opportunities. So perhaps a business that is grossing 3 million to 5 million and up, or maybe it has a net profit each year of over 500,000 or something like that. But what they do, a lot of times they come in and they inject their capital. They're typically not going to be hands-on in the business. They're usually looking for an opportunity to, I say partner up very loosely, but partner up with the existing business owner. They may give them some equity back to keep them on board. Jade, I'm gonna pick on you. Let's take Jade, for instance, and she has her staffing company and she gets approached by this private equity group. They may say, we love your numbers, we love your projections. We know that by infusing this capital, we happen to own similar companies, I don't know, in the Midwest and in the Northeast, and we want to expand into your market. So we would like to do an equity buyout. We'll give you a minority ownership back, maybe 15, 20% back, because we want to keep you here because we want you to continue to run it day to day. But their mentality a lot of times is, we're going to give you a smaller piece of a larger pie. So all of a sudden, it's not like it's just 20% or 15% back of just Jade's company. Maybe it's of the entire pie that they're rolling this up under. So there's all kind of avenues to a possible exit. And again, I'm giving you very loose examples. There are all kinds of others, but these are the main two that you're really going to see most frequently.
You have great analogies, and I love for companies to approach me, Terri. Thank you. So giving some insight about that, I think that while a lot of maybe our audience also has a lot of small businesses or they're aspiring entrepreneurs, I'll say this to you, and we're going to get into a little bit more deep diving, but before we get off of this call today, I always tell people, you must begin with the end in mind. The
That's so
reality
true.
is we do not live forever, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, there may be opportunities that is so much bigger than us than what we ever could have imagined or dreamed of. And so a lot of our, folks that we work with, I love, natural hair care products. And they said, think about Carol's daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Carol's daughter is now purchased by L'Oreal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a brand that she started in her kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And now it is a global brand under a
Mm-hmm.
global, with a global merger, but it still retains the name.
Right.
So when I look at small business owners, entrepreneurs who have been able to come into a private equity scenario or situation or
Mm-hmm.
merge with a different business, I think about the opportunities are limitless if
Yes.
you build it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very important, and hence the name Build to Sell, that we begin with the end in mind. What is it that we want to see? Even if we were to leave it to our children,
Yes.
even if we were to take that business and say, hey, I want my kids to have this business,
Mm-hmm.
we also want to make sure that we are setting our kids up for success as well.
Yes.
Meaning, if life happens and they decide to depart ways from the business, or they recognize that it is not their passion, will they have the opportunity to sell it if it is set up correctly or not set up
Mm-hmm.
correctly? We need to think
Mm-hmm.
about these things. And so these are some of the avenues to sell. And so the next thing we're going to talk about is being prepared to sell it, meaning,
Yes.
okay, you're a small business owner, you're an entrepreneur, and you're not there yet. But how can you get there, and what are the steps that we can take to get to that next level? So
Absolutely.
now we're going to talk about the preparation of preparing for the avenue to sell. And
Yes.
then and if there's anyone who has any questions, please drop them in the chat box.
Yes.
We will open the open discussion towards the end.
Okay. So Jade raises a great point, and I love that mentality of beginning with the end in mind. So when you look at that, first thing to think about, let's say that you're on ground zero and you haven't even launched your business yet, but you're trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to name my product, my service, my business? And a lot of times we make things very personal, right? Like, I love sweets. Everybody that knows me knows that, right? Cupcakes, cookies, you name it. So let's just pretend that I'm a baker today, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm gonna launch my own bakery, and I'm gonna call it Terri's Cookies. It's wonderful as long as Terri is still there, right? But sometimes down the line, if I decide to sell the business off, I get so big that I sell it to, I don't know, Pillsbury or somebody, right? Like, maybe they want to keep it Terry's Cookies, but maybe they don't. So sometimes it's really good to think about separating yourself from the brand or the business, because if you're too attached, let's take another example. I love to frequent coffee shops, pre-COVID, of course, but a lot of times if I think about why do I like to go to this coffee shop, it's because they know me, or perhaps I know the owner, or I see them, hey, Susie, I'm looking for Susie, even subconsciously when I go in there. So would I feel differently if I go to the coffee shop and find out that Bill bought it next week? Possibly. And even if it's not a conscious thing, maybe nothing has changed about the product, the service, the atmosphere, but maybe as a customer, I'm just subconsciously attached to Susie and she's not here. And now I don't want to come back, right? And we don't even know that we're doing this sometimes and kind of coming in with this different attitude towards businesses because they're too attached, and we as a customer are too attached to the owner. So think about that for yourself as a business owner. If you get ready to sell this business, because no one can guarantee anything, of course, but the buyer is going to be concerned that if you're the key employee and you're the face of this business, if you're gone and I buy this business, am I going to lose 30, 40% of the customer base all because you're no longer here? So think about that. The second thing to think about is maintain accurate financial records. So please keep good books and records. QuickBooks, if you don't want to pay for a bookkeeper or something, I know sometimes like the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center, they offer workshops. Sometimes they're even free. I've seen free workshops during COVID on webinars. Take a QuickBooks class. Sometimes the library even gives them for free, I know here in Jacksonville. But you want to have some record keeping. And the reason that we have this asterisk here about remember you can't cheat twice, that's kind of an adage that you'll hear from a lot of business brokers. So I say this by first saying I am not the IRS, okay? And I say that to a lot of customers or potential customers that I meet with. They're nervous because it's my job to look over their financials, including their tax returns, and I can kind of see the sweat begin to hit their forehead of, okay, so the books may not be totally accurate. Again, I'm not the IRS, but you can't cheat twice, right? So in other words, if you have been getting by with maybe paying less on your taxes, you can't expect to get a higher return when you get ready to sell. You've already gotten your benefit, okay, by whatever you choose to do with your records. And this is not a judgment statement. This is just a fact, okay? So keep that in mind. I tell my customers, even when it comes to businesses that may have a large cash portion of business, if you can't prove it, it doesn't exist in our mind and in the buyer's mind, okay? So make sure that you are keeping good books and records. Now, a quick tangent. This becomes very important too for our service professionals, hairstylists, barbers, nail technicians, people of like in those industries, because a lot of times there's a lot of cash in those businesses. And you take a barber or a hairstylist, they're making money weekly a lot of times, right? And if they have no tracking of how much are they spending on their products, how much are they making for each customer that comes in, are they tracking this? Even down to just trying to go get yourself a car or get a mortgage, you have no record of your income and expenses. So even for someone who's an independent contractor like that, make it your goal to keep good records, even if it's just for yourself, to be able to set yourself up in a better financial situation if it comes down to whatever life goals you may have in that case. So that's my tangent on that. All right, third, invest in employee training. This is so important. And for the sake of being honest, I've heard a lot from a lot of business owners in the last year, and this is from a variety of industries, that the hardest part of the business now is trying to find good help, trying to find good employees. So when you find them, invest in them. And the reason that we say this, again, if you get ready to put your business to market and put it on market to sell it, again, you're not going to be there, right, if someone buys it. But to know they have a good key staff who's properly trained, possibly cross-trained, has been with the business 2-3 years or longer. If you have someone that, even if they're not already labeled the manager, you have confidence that, okay, but I have Joe Blow over here and I'm confident that he can step up and be the manager if you needed him to be. That is huge added value to your business and the likelihood of you being able to sell that business. So invest in your employees. If they've been with you for a long time, train them and help them to be able to do any of the responsibilities that you feel like you could do. Again, as Jade mentioned, even if it's just to get away for a vacation once a year, right? Like, begin to separate yourself from being there day to day in that capacity. And then lastly, implement good systems. We're going to get into this further with Jade, but implement good systems and systems that are transferable. And I find that a lot of times the mom and pop business owner may not think about that and say, oh, no, I don't really do much during the day. Give them a piece of paper and tell them to write down everything they do during that day. It's 50 different hats. They're the HR person, they're the custodian, they're the cashier, they're the marketing person, the salesperson. Like, you're doing a lot. So for you to be able to transfer and create good systems to a new owner, that's huge. And I'm not going to steal any thunder from Jade on that. She's going to get into that, but she's going to give you some great points on things that you can implement, even as a small business owner, or even as an independent contractor, that can help you to organize those systems to, again, make them transferable.
Thank you, Terri. That's a great value add from this conversation. So typically, when you're talking about some of the tools that we can utilize, The small business, the SBDC, for those of you who are unfamiliar, it is the Small Business Development Center, and it's actually located right here. Their division is in UNF. And so it's a great resource for anyone who may want to, connect with them about consulting and things of that nature as well. Typically, I am one of the resources from the SBDC. So what will happen is they can provide you with the guidance, and then they can refer you with vendors that are approved to navigate through those tasks for you, whether it be marketing or building procedures or things of that nature. But it's a great tool. There's plenty of free classes, a lot of virtual webinars out there. So please take advantage of that as well. I do have some actual tools, some affiliate partnerships with QuickBooks and some other tools. So I will be sending that in the link. And thank you guys thank you for the chat. We will be replaying this if you'd like to share this with anyone else afterwards on YouTube for a recap of everything that we've talked about today. So one of the biggest things, so the two bullets at the bottom: invest in employees and implement systems that are transferable. So I personally specialize in the business procedure and the strategy planning to make sure that you tell me your end goal and we develop a plan so that you receive that. So if it is that you would like more quality of life and a work-life balance, how do we invest in those things? And then also, if you are preparing to sell your business, or you would like to be able to have an exit plan for emergencies like, unfortunately, the coronavirus or retirement or anything of that nature, then it's very important that we create those systems. So let's talk a little bit about business systems, okay? So the most important thing that we want to think about is the initial strategy. We're going to consider this, of course, it says the way the organization thinks and plans, but I like to say this is the blueprint, okay? When we talk about building a house, we do not build a house on sand, we build it on a concrete foundation. And typically, if you're going to cut corners when you build that house, when the hurricane comes in, it wipes the house right away, right? So now we're at a loss and we're starting over from scratch. So your strategy is very important, thinking about what you want to see, beginning with the end in mind, and being able to create a strategy that will help your growth. And also you won't become overwhelmed for it. Because if you have a great product or a great business sales pitch, you want to see it grow, but you need to be prepared for it to grow as well. And then once we talk about the processes, so the way the organization is operating, operationally, we often see businesses that, let's just say mom and pop shop, they have employees, and maybe you're noticing their hiccups along the way, right? Maybe you're noticing that the cashier can't properly, handle the cash register, or maybe they have a new system implemented and there's issues, or maybe there's delays in processing even at a cash register. Those are some of the things operationally we want to make sure that we have the right processes in place. So even if it's a process regarding email distribution, right? So, okay, I want to be able to send these sales. I want to prepare for Labor Day weekend because we should have sales going on and we should be, ramping that up. Or maybe for the holidays, what are the processes in place for your sales strategy? What do you have in place as far as your response time? Is it a 1 to 2 business day response time? Or are you looking for someone to have a process where, all right, this email comes in, it goes to this admin process whatever estimate or invoice, and then it goes out to that person, and then they come back to you and they sign a contract. That would be considered a process, okay? So the flow through of being able to accomplish the goal. All right, people, the training in people, okay? It's important, as Terri talked about, investing in people, not just from a training perspective only, but a lot of times we get our employees and we expect that they want to see our business succeed as much as we do, which unfortunately, I'm here to say to you guys, that's unrealistic expectation, especially if you are the one that's going to profit from a very lucrative business, right? So thinking about the people and how do you invest in people that this may not be the last job that they have, right? Especially your small business owner, maybe they're working part-time, right? How do you add value to that person besides an hourly wage? So this is something that I like to talk about with our small businesses, because it is essential to how you're adapting in onboarding any new employees, how you're able to have a high employee retention rate. Keeping people engaged in your business is very important. So I'll use myself for an example. We do have a staffing company. We have approximately, last I checked, 72 employees. And with that being said, the majority of them are part-time employees. Okay, a lot of you are like, part-time employees, they're fluid, they fluctuate, they come and go. I have had part-time employees who have a full-time job stay with our company for 2.5 years and 3 years. And so one of the key things that I teach the businesses is to look at what are your goals and how you can help motivate and possibly inspire. Maybe you don't necessarily have the mentorship, skill set, right? But how can you incorporate maybe working with nonprofits or working with other leadership trainers that can help you, learn these skills? So we actually have another webinar that's coming up. It's called Lead the Way. It's on September 15th. We definitely hope you join it. There'll be a replay of that as well. But as a business owner, thinking about leadership, that is very important, especially if you're going to have multiple employees. One of the things that I'll give you a secret of the trade of being able to retain our employees is that we mentor them and we acknowledge that this is not their forever job. We acknowledge that this is a way for them to make some quick extra cash, and we're just happy that they've come along for the ride and they enjoy the culture of the company. We protect our employees. We make sure that they are not in any compromising situations in the jobs that they're staffing, and things of that nature. So it's very important that you lead with integrity and also how you implement the systems. And then, of course, I always say people don't necessarily leave jobs. They leave people. They leave bad attitudes, because I don't know if there's anyone that's on this call like myself, but I've worked for managers in my past that I said, oh my God, I can't wait to get away from this person. And it wasn't, the pay wasn't bad. The benefits were great, but I just didn't want to be bothered with these employees because they weren't being properly managed and coached, and I was professional and they were not. So those are some things to think about when your organization leads your small business, even if it's one employee or if it's 70. It's very important that you have the proper organization. And then the technology. So again, how do you connect? Are we using Microsoft Outlook? Are we using CRM tools, a client relationship management tool? Do we have certain processes in place with what the technology that accommodates these processes? Are things automated? So I think it's very important that as you review the technology in your business, that you have a way to properly track it. Again, the metrics that she talks about in financial tracking, QuickBooks would be considered that piece of technology. We personally, in my business, we utilize an app to push out the schedules, right? So that's a part of the technology that the employees receive, and they get their shifts and their details. And it's really great because then, they can also determine if they even want to take or pick up a job. So definitely some really great tools that I do have listed on my website under the tools section. So definitely check it out, selfmadejade.com/tools, and register for any of the affiliate links. But it'll be some of the items that I personally recommend, have tested myself, and know that they work really well. And then next thing we want to think about is, what do those 4 items produce, right? So now you've streamlined business operations, okay? You're having consistency in your results and the employee engagement, right? So it ultimately reduces costs and increases profits. So let's talk about the increase in profits. Okay, this sounds like a lot of work, right? It sounds like you need to spend some money to make some money, okay? So let's talk about that. You have an admin and they're making $15 an hour, okay? That person is making $15 an hour. They spend 20 hours a week, okay? So you're looking at about $300 that you're spending on administration work. But your skill set, when you are working directly with your clients, makes $100 an hour. So let's talk about that. So you spend 20 hours at $100 an hour, which is how much? $2,000. So we're wanting to deduct that week of 100 that you spent in the 300, so that you can focus on building better relationships with your clients, so that you can focus on your skill set and potentially do some networking, marketing, and things that will help you. So making sure that you have proper business system is an investment. It costs money. It's not cheap or free, but anything like, worthwhile having is an investment, especially when you're dealing with business. You've already taken the time and said, I want to be a business owner. I want to own my own system. Well, there's a lot that comes along with it. And you want to make sure that if you have a passion, a skill set, you're that great photographer, or you are a baker, or you are having retail sales, you want to make sure that your business system is able to properly flow and automate all of your processes so that you can have client receives consistency, your employees feel valued, and ultimately your operations will allow you to go on vacation. So I know I said a lot, and I'm definitely interested if there's any questions regarding this information. Terri, I'm going to ask you, is there anything that you like to add or that you're seeing with the businesses that are wanting to sell, or whether or not they have this in place?
A lot of times they don't, unfortunately. So it doesn't make for consistent results being one. So we look at typically 3 years of financials, and FYI, the banks do also. So that's why a lot of times when you see businesses for sale, they'll have 3 years, right? So if we're in 2020, they have 19, 18, and 17. We're halfway through 2020, so they may have an annualized 2020. But FYI to you for that. So if you're ever looking to go get funding, or if you have a buyer who's looking to finance the purchase of your business, the bank is going to look at 3 years also. And the reason for that, they're looking for trends. Sometimes if you line those 3 years up, 1 year we made 200,000. The second year we made 500,000, and in the third year we dropped down to 170. So that's kind of all over the place. There's not consistent results. And now sometimes there are real reasons for those kind of fluctuations in the revenue and things like that. But your goal should definitely be consistent results. And, again, before COVID, it's always like you're looking for increases year over year. But in a climate like this, even if you just stay kind of level and consistent, that's a win versus being some serious decline. And again, I say that with a grain of salt because everyone's business has probably taken some hit of some sort. So don't beat yourself up and feel like, oh, I had a loss. Everybody did for the most part. But my reason for pointing that out with the consistent results is because, as Jade said, if you start here with the business systems, it does trickle down and produce these results that are all going to help you get a higher rate of return on your sale if you do get to that point. These are excellent, excellent points.
Thanks, Terri. Appreciate that. Okay, so we have an opportunity for open discussion. However, I don't have any questions here in the chat. So
Okay.
I'm just going to give it a moment. If there's anyone that would like to unmute for a moment and just express any feedback they have about this or what are their thoughts, we would definitely love to hear them.
Yes.
We'll be closing the call shortly. So we want to be cognizant of your time and make sure that, you get back to your family life and everything. We will be posting this on YouTube so you can refer back to it later or share it with anyone that is interested.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we have a little bit of moment for open discussion if there's any questions.
So I have a question. This is Tarsha.
Okay.
Hi.
So hi. So let's go back to talking about when was it Shea Moisture had sold the company?
Carol's daughter.
Carol's daughter, right. Which is real puzzling to me, like when she did make the move to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But in that sense, when you said, like, once you make that decision, making sure that you still have some type of hand on some type of gross money,
Mm-hmm.
would that be a smart decision to make by not having some type of hand still in it? Because I'm not sure if she sold it all to them, but
right. I think it just really comes down to that unique situation and what someone's ultimate goals are. So as with anything, right, we get what we negotiate. So I just think it really depends. Like some people are very, very passionate about, no, I absolutely have to have creative control or I'm not selling anything. And that's quite all right if that's, their position. And for others, they may see it as again, I've taken this as far as I can go. And so my goal is just to see this become a global brand. Maybe I would rather be the global brand with no say so versus being a regional brand that I control everything, but I can't break out of my region. You see what I mean? So I think it just depends on what the goals are and what all is kind of included in that deal, you know? So it just really
Right.
depends. And I'll even give you another example for like a Main Street sale. For every sale, there's usually a transition period included for, by standard, 2 weeks for the buyer and seller to work together after closing, for the seller to train the buyer on kind of their operations and learn the kind of lay of the land. But in some cases, a buyer may be able to negotiate, again here, depending on what they negotiate, with the seller to say, hey, I actually want to keep you on for a year. We'll work out some kind of rate of pay. And if you're agreeable, I want you to be my consultant for a year. So that way, if I have questions, you'll tell me, you'll give me X amount of hours each week to chat with you, or to actually come physically in the business. So again, it just depends on, I think, what both parties mutually agree to. If it's a situation like L'Oreal and Carol's daughter, or Susie and Bill, you know what I mean? It just depends on those situations.
Because there were actually quite a few of them that actually did that switch over. Shea Moisture, you know, a lot of them did that, and which was kind of puzzling to me. Like, is that something like maybe they caught a tip or something, like, oh, let's get out before, because it just didn't seem smart, because they were a booming business already.
Right.
So
but
it
a
was
lot of
just
times
kinda,
in those cases, it's because they have a well-oiled machine coming behind them at that point. So if you take somebody, again, like a L'Oreal, who, even if Shea Moisture is great, maybe they've got a distribution deal with Target and Walmart and all these different stores, they still may not have the capital they need to either supply the demand from the customers. It could be a supply issue. It could be that perhaps because L'Oreal is so big and has so many different brands under the umbrella, all of a sudden the cost to produce a bottle gets driven down. So there's so many different possible positives for why these brands sell and do these deals. So yeah, I think it just depends on, again, just each unique situation.
okay. And then one more thing you mentioned before, like possibly if you knew someone who basically was in a different region, or like I'm in Jacksonville. So if I knew someone maybe like in Texas or something like that, I have a clothing line. And if I'm saying, okay, well, you have a clothing line, I have a clothing line, how would we find those types of people? Or are there just somebody like we just see, whether it be like on Facebook or somebody, you know, brand that we know that came up, and we just reach out to them? Or is there like a list, almost like a vendor's list, so to
That's
speak?
a great question. So sometimes it may just be through your networking, be it social networking or it's someone that you know that knows somebody. But even in a case like with us, with the BBF that I mentioned, right? So we have this MLS system. So to give you an example, I just came across a listing this week, in fact. It's a clothing retail company that's an e-commerce company, an internet business. So even looking through opportunities like that, if you see a business that has already been established, and let's just say that maybe you produce shirts, but they produce dresses and pants, they may produce shirts also. What happens if you then say, well, hey, I can acquire this business. I have their brand, their website, their vendors, everything is already set up, and they're making some money. Now all I have to do is add and weave my products into what they already have. And if I want to rebrand the whole thing under my current brand, or just make my brand kind of rolled up under theirs, there's so many ways to approach that. But sometimes a great way to do that is by finding an opportunity that is for sale. So for instance, I'll put it in the chat here, by the way. So my website, which is exactly as it sounds, mindyourbusinesstoday.com, has the link to our MLS website. And I encourage people to play with it. You can go in, pick the county, you can pick the industry, pick the gross sales that you're looking for, or whatever down payment you have available, and look at all the possible listings across the state that will be for sale in that given industry. And the beauty about internet businesses, by the way, which I think we're going to continue to see as a growth area of businesses that are being sold. I sold my first internet business last year, first deal involved in that, and I could see that that's going to be a big thing. The beauty of that is with the internet, it's the internet. So someone could have an e-commerce business in Texas, as you mentioned, and it can be relocated to Jacksonville because all you need is a computer, right? And a mailbox. So that's the neat thing about, I think, a growing segment of business opportunities in the internet and e-commerce space that we will continue to see.
That was really helpful. And Tarsha, I appreciate the question that you had too, because, you know, definitely it definitely adds value to everyone else who's listening who may not have thought to ask that question as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, considering the resources and talking about the sales, the retail, and also like the hair care products and things like that, what are the resources that people are enduring has been one of the biggest questions that I've seen happening in regards to, like, again, mass production. They are not ready to make that investment and things of that nature. She got a lot of slack from it. A lot of the business owners tend to worry about the slack that they receive from what a sale looks like too. And I want to just say, it definitely takes courage to take a brand that you had for 20 years and then say, all right, I'm going to bring in these outsiders, but great so that you can negotiate and put in some things in the deal to make sure that the brand stays true to you and potentially your legacy as well. So I think it's some great questions. The call to action that we have on here, you can schedule time with Terri. So Terri, tell them, I mean, I know you told them about the website, but tell them about the assessment piece of it.
Definitely. So I do provide free business opinions of value. That's a free service, it's confidential, and you're not obligated to list the business. So for some people, that looks like every year they get their taxes done, they call me, hey, Terri, I just want to know if you could take a look at my numbers and see what my opinion of value might be. So that way you're informed, well informed, and kind of have an idea of the, I guess, financial health of your business in terms of an opinion of value, but also if you know what your number is in your mind of, okay, well, if I were to walk away today or tomorrow, this is the number that I'm looking for, we could look at it and say, okay, well, you would need to be grossing X or netting X in order to get that number. So it's just a really good piece of information. And yes, that's, again, a completely free and confidential service. Now, I just kind of add the caveat there that, again, I am based and licensed in Florida. A lot of times businesses, though, are pretty consistent, you know, regardless of where you're located. So I just want to make sure that I disclaimer that I deal with primarily businesses here in the state of Florida.
Yes, thank you. So, Terri, oh, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Tarsha again. I definitely want to take full advantage of that, Terri.
Sure.
And talk with you more about what I'm doing and where I'm trying to go. So definitely.
Absolutely. I'll look forward to it.
Okay. So guys, I will send out the links to, you know, the information about replaying their YouTube video so that you can see everything, but also our website. And definitely leave Terri a review if you find this helpful, if it gave you some insight. Maybe you're not quite ready at this moment, but this might have given you some things to start researching and think about as you do prepare for this next level or where you're headed. So we definitely would love a review. Terri has her information. I'm going to drop that in the email, and then also mine as well. And we just appreciate you connecting with us today and
yes,
you know, listening to learn. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. And thank you, Jade.
My pleasure. You guys have a great evening. We will catch you on the next one on the episode Lead the Way.
Take care.
Thanks.